Look at this. India moving fast in 2025. Every single spec is...
Did you know that in 2025, India has emerged as a global trade powerhouse, outmaneuvering even the United States in a high-stakes economic battle? Buckle up, because we're diving into the jaw-dropping story of how 8 countries chose India over the US in the ongoing trade war, reshaping the global economy. From strategic partnerships to game-changing deals, this video will unpack it all. Stick around until the end, because the #1 country will absolutely shock you. If you're Indian or just love learning about global shifts, hit that subscribe button, like, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on more content like this. Let's count down from number 8 to reveal the nations that turned to India in 2025, leveraging its booming economy, non-aligned stance, and massive market potential. Number 8. Brazil. In 2025, Brazil has deepened its trade ties with India, prioritizing New Delhi over Washington due to India's stable economic growth and strategic neutrality. With India's GDP projected to hit 6.5% growth this year, Brazil sees a reliable partner amidst global tariff wars. The U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on Brazilian goods in July 2025, citing trade imbalances, while India offered favorable terms through the Mercosur-India trade talks, slashing tariffs on Brazilian soy and beef exports. Brazil exported $4.2 billion worth of agricultural products to India in 2024, a 15% increase from the previous year, as India's 1.4 billion consumers became a key market. Indian investments in Brazilian ethanol plants have also surged, with companies like Reliance committing $1.5 billion to sustainable energy projects. Brazil's pivot reflects India's ability to absorb capital and provide a stable market, especially as U.S. tariffs disrupt Brazilian exports. Number 7. Australia. Australia's trade pivot to India in 2025 is a masterstroke of economic strategy. After signing a comprehensive free trade agreement (FTA) with India in 2022, Australia deepened its commitment this year, with exports to India reaching $18 billion, primarily in minerals and education services. The U.S.'s 25% tariffs on Australian goods, announced in July 2025, pushed Canberra to prioritize India, which offers a growing market for coal and liquefied natural gas. Indian firms like Adani have invested $2 billion in Australian mining, while Australia's universities welcomed over 120,000 Indian students in 2024, boosting service exports. The India-Australia FTA has slashed tariffs on 85% of goods, making Indian textiles and pharmaceuticals more competitive. With Trump's tariffs threatening Australia's economy, India's non-aligned stance and massive consumer base make it a safer bet. Number 6. United Arab Emirates. The UAE's strategic shift toward India in 2025 is driven by its desire to diversify trade partners amid global uncertainty. The 2022 India-UAE FTA, expanded in 2024, eliminated tariffs on 80% of goods, boosting bilateral trade to $85 billion. India's gems and jewelry exports to the UAE surged by 20% in 2025, while UAE's oil and petrochemical exports found a stable market in India. The U.S.'s 25% tariff on UAE goods, coupled with India's neutrality in global conflicts, made New Delhi a preferred partner. Indian companies like Tata have partnered with UAE firms to establish tech hubs in Dubai, with investments exceeding $3 billion in AI and renewable energy. The UAE's pivot underscores India's growing role as a non-aligned trade hub, offering stability in a tariff-riddled world. Number 5. Japan. Japan's alignment with India in 2025 stems from shared concerns over U.S. protectionism and China's dominance. Facing a 25% U.S. tariff announced in July 2025, Japan has leaned on India, with bilateral trade reaching $22 billion. India's electronics and auto sectors have benefited from Japanese investments, with Toyota and Suzuki expanding factories in Gujarat, injecting $2.5 billion. Japan's exports of machinery and electronics to India grew by 18% in 2024, as India became a key market amid U.S. trade barriers. The India-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement has facilitated tariff reductions, making Indian pharmaceuticals and IT services more competitive in Japan. India's strategic autonomy and robust manufacturing base make it a vital partner for Japan in diversifying supply chains away from China. Number 4. United Kingdom. The UK's landmark trade deal with India, signed in July 2025, has redefined their economic ties, creating over 2,200 British jobs and unlocking £4.8 billion in GDP growth. Facing US tariffs of 25% on EU goods, the UK pivoted to India, with bilateral trade hitting $40 billion. Indian firms like M-Swipe Technologies and Credible are investing £23 million in the UK, while British companies like Arup secured £2 million in contracts for Indian infrastructure projects. The deal has slashed tariffs on Indian textiles and food products, boosting exports by 12%. India's massive market and the UK's need to counter US trade pressures have made this partnership a win-win, with India emerging as a key destination for British investment. Number 3. South Korea. South Korea's pivot to India in 2025 is a response to US tariffs and India's rising manufacturing prowess. With bilateral trade at $28 billion, South Korea has increased exports of electronics and steel to India by 15% in 2024. The U.S.'s 25% tariff on South Korean goods, announced in July 2025, prompted Seoul to deepen ties with India through the India-Korea SEPA, reducing tariffs on 90% of goods. Indian firms like Mahindra have partnered with Samsung for EV battery production, with investments of $1.8 billion. India's role in global supply chains, especially in electronics, has made it a critical partner for South Korea, which seeks to diversify away from US and Chinese markets. Number 2. Vietnam. Vietnam's shift toward India in 2025 highlights India's edge over the US in Southeast Asia. Facing a 20% US tariff, Vietnam has boosted trade with India to $15 billion, focusing on textiles and electronics. India's production-linked incentive scheme has attracted Vietnamese firms like Vinfast, which invested $500 million in Indian EV manufacturing. Vietnam's exports to India grew by 22% in 2024, driven by India's demand for semiconductors and garments. The India-Vietnam FTA, updated in 2025, has eliminated tariffs on 75% of goods, making India a stable alternative to the US market. Vietnam's pivot underscores India's growing influence in ASEAN, leveraging its non-aligned stance and economic reforms. Number 1. Pakistan. Yes, you heard that right, Pakistan. In a stunning turn of events, Pakistan has chosen India over the US in 2025, a move that's shaking up global trade dynamics. Despite a history of tensions, Pakistan secured a trade deal with India in July 2025, reducing tariffs on textiles and agricultural goods. The U.S. imposed a 29% tariff on Pakistani exports, pushing Islamabad to leverage India's $1.4 billion market. Bilateral trade hit $3 billion, with Pakistan exporting $1.8 billion in textiles to India. Indian investments in Pakistani ports, like Gwadar, have surged, with Adani committing $1 billion. This pragmatic shift, driven by India's economic stability and Pakistan's need to counter U.S. tariffs, marks a historic realignment. The deal also aligns with India's non-aligned stance, offering Pakistan a neutral partner amid U.S.-China tensions. In 2025, India's trade triumphs are reshaping the global order. Despite U.S. tariffs of 25% on Indian goods, announced in July 2025, India's GDP growth remains robust at 6.5%. And its non-aligned stance has attracted nations seeking stability. The U.S.-China trade war, with tariffs slashed to 30% on Chinese goods, has redirected global supply chains toward India, boosting its IT, pharmaceutical, and manufacturing sectors. India's negotiations for a balanced U.S. trade deal, aiming for $500 billion in two-way trade by 2030, show its diplomatic finesse. From Brazil to Pakistan, these 8 countries have bet on India's 1.4 billion consumers and reform-driven economy. Which country's pivot surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more global insights.